Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are the headlines.
That's a non-option.
Albay Representative Joey Salcedo on Wednesday claimed that Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte will likely run for president in next year's elections.
French health authorities advised against use of the Moderna COVID jab for people under 30 late yesterday after a nationwide study confirmed a slight risk of cardiac inflammation associated with mRNA vaccines.
In addition to that,
the lawyer representing some of the victims of the Astroworld Music Festival says rapper Travis Scott should be held accountable after 8 people were killed and dozens injured in a crash during his concert in Houston, Texas.
And November 11 is Veterans Day in the U.S. in honor of the men and women who have served or are serving their country. EBC Hawaii Pacific takes us on a brief tour of Pearl Harbor.
First in our news, Albay Representative Joey Salcedo claimed that Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte will likely run for president in next year's election. Salcedo made the claim after Sara withdrew her re-election bid and named her brother Vice Mayor Sebastian Baste Duterte as her substitute on Tuesday. In an interview on PTV4, Salcedo said Sara wanted to run for the presidency since May, noting that running for vice president was not an option for her.
That's a non-option. There is a portion of this chat that will essentially says it's not an option.
Ayoko muna mag-speculate. Pero kung sakasakali mong pong mangyayari yan, mahal ko po si Pangulong Duterte. Desisyon niya po ito at desisyon ng partido na tumakbo po ako ng vice-presidente. Basta isa lang naman po ang layunin ko, nabanggit ko po kanina. Ang layunin ko lang naman po ay magserbisyo lang po sa kapwa ko Pilipino. Kahit na anong kapasidad ko. Patuloy po ako magsiservisyo. Lalo na po para sa mga supporters natin na nagpagod na po. Walang kapagurang sumusuporta, naniniwala, umiikot sa buong Pilipinas para hikayatin at ipaalam sa taong bayan yung kandidatura ko. Nalulungkot po ako para sa kanila, sa mga naniniwala sa amin.
Now, Senator Christopher Bongo on Tuesday said that his plans of running for the vice presidency of the Philippines in the upcoming 2022 elections may be subject to change. However, Senator Go assured the public that even if he doesn't claim the vice presidency seat, he will continue to serve the Filipino community. Meanwhile, Representative Salcedo, said that the presidential daughter will likely run under the Lakas Christian Muslim Democrats or Lakas CMD party if she aims for the highest post in the land. In a Facebook post, the presidential daughter said her brother, who has also officially backed out of the vice mayoral race, will now be substituted by lawyer Melchor Kitain Jr. Like his sister, Baste announced his withdrawal via Facebook and thanked the Dabaweños for the support they've given him. He later proceeded to the Commission on Elections or COMELEC office to withdraw his candidacy right after his sister's own withdrawal.
Indonesia and Malaysia on Wednesday agreed to launch a vaccinated travel lane between the two countries in stages. Indonesia and Malaysia again have agreed to introduce a travel corridor between them on a gradual basis, starting with key areas like capital cities and the holiday island of Bali. This was announced in a joint statement following a meeting at the State Palace in Bogor outside Jakarta between Indonesian President Joko Widodo and Malaysian Prime Minister Minister Ismail Sabri Yaqub. Mr. Ismail, who arrived on Tuesday and will be in the Indonesian capital until Thursday. According to the Straits Times, the two leaders on Wednesday witnessed the signing of the Memoranda of Understanding, or MOU, on education and customs by their ministers. Before leaving Jakarta, Mr. Ismail is scheduled to meet Indonesian businessmen and the chief editors of Indonesian media and Malaysian residents in Indonesia. He is also due to visit a defense industry facility in Bandung in West Java.
Meanwhile, French health authorities advise against the use of the Moderna COVID jab for people under 30 late yesterday after a nationwide study confirmed a slight risk of cardiac inflammation associated with mRNA vaccines. The study from the Evergrande, an independent medicine safety research group that works closely with the French government, confirmed previous findings while noting cases are rare and do not cast doubt on the effectiveness of the shots. It looked at all people in France aged 12 to 50 who were hospitalized for myocarditis, or inflammation of the heart muscle, or pericarditis, or inflammation of the tissue surrounding the heart, between May 15 and August 31 of this year. Results show that vaccines from both Pfizer and Moderna increase the risk of these illnesses within 7 days of vaccination. For Pfizer, the result was nearly 80% lower, with the number of cases per million doses estimated at 27. The United States has also delayed the approval of the Moderna jab for young people, though last week they recommended the use of the Pfizer vaccine for children ages 5 to 11 after reviewing the risks of myocarditis.
We haven't heard the last word on booster shots. Now, drug makers Pfizer and BioNTech announced Tuesday they have formally submitted a request asking U.S. officials for emergency authorization of their COVID-19 booster vaccine for people aged 18 and older. The move follows research published by the companies in late October, indicating a third shot is 95.6% effective against symptomatic infection based on clinical trials carried out on 10,000 people. The companies asked the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to add the new population segment, amending emergency use authorization already granted in September for a third dose for everyone aged 65 and up, as well as people at high risk of developing severe COVID-19. Pfizer's initial proposal for approval of boosters to everyone aged 16 and over which was backed by President Joe Biden's administration, was rejected at that time.
The 2021 Shanghai Marathon has been indefinitely postponed, according to organizers today, citing a resurgence of the coronavirus that also has forced the suspension of the Beijing and Wuhan marathons. China is battling a fresh Delta-driven outbreak that has spread across the country and sparked tough new measures to stamp out the virus before the Beijing Winter Olympics in February. Organizers said a new date would be announced in the future. Although China's case numbers remain relatively low, it reported 54 new infections on Wednesday. China takes a zero-tolerance approach toward the coronavirus, and the government is especially concerned over any impact on the February 4 to 20 Winter Games. Authorities have implemented mass testing, targeted lockdowns, and have suspended some cross-provincial tour groups and closed tourist sites.
The World Health Organization warned Tuesday there could be a shortfall of up to 2 billion syringes in 2022, which threatens to hamper vaccine efforts globally if production does not improve. The shortages are the result of COVID-19 vaccine campaigns, with billions more syringes than normal being used worldwide, badly denting global supplies. Take a look.
A shortage of syringes is unfortunately a real possibility, and here's some more numbers. With the global manufacturing capacity of around 6 billion per year for immunization syringes, it's pretty clear that a deficit in 2022 of over $1 billion could happen if we continue with business as usual. There have already been more than 6.8 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines administered globally. Now, to give you a comparison, this is nearly double the number of routine vaccinations that are given per year, which of course means double the number of immunization syringes. Syringes are particularly impacted by transportation problems because they're large. A syringe takes up 10 times more space in transportation than a dose of a vaccine. One serious result of a shortage could be delays in routine immunizations and other healthcare services. And so here we're talking about the injections that we give as part of normal healthcare. Now, it could have a public health impact for years to come if we have a generation of children who don't receive their childhood vaccinations.
Four lions at a Singapore wildlife park have tested positive for the coronavirus after coming into contact with infected zookeepers and have symptoms including coughing and sneezing. The endangered Asiatic lions started displaying signs of illness at the weekend, prompting officials to order coronavirus tests. The government's Animal and Veterinary Service said the infected big cats, along with 5 others at the night safari park, have been placed in isolation in their den. 3 zookeepers from the night safari are confirmed to have been infected. The park is an open-air zoo, home to hundreds of animals, which welcomes visitors at night. An African lion at Singapore Zoo, which is adjacent to the night safari, has also fallen sick, and officials have ordered virus tests. Both Singapore Zoo and the night safari remain open, although the lion exhibits have been temporarily closed. Singapore is currently facing its worst COVID outbreak since the start of the pandemic, reporting 2,000 to 3,000 cases a day and a handful of deaths. And the news continues here on Eagle News. CJ and I will be back right after this.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Sana'y bigyan ng pag-asa para ibigin ka ng pag-asa para mahalin ka ng pag-asa para pagsilbihan ka ng pag-asa.
Hi guys, this is Selena Marie. Please catch me on Letters and Music on Air and online this coming Saturday, November 13, 1 to 2 p.m. only here on Net 95. See ya!
Welcome back to the news. The lawyer representing some of the victims of the Astroworld Music Festival says rapper Travis Scott should be held accountable after 8 people were killed and dozens were injured in a crush during his concert in Houston, Texas. Take a look.
In addition to that, Mr. Scott, once aware that we have bodies floating on the crowd, body surfing right in front of him, lifeless, okay? Continue on with the show. Not only did he continue on with the show, as more and more bodies were dropping, essentially he went ahead and turned to the crowd and got the crowd more energized, more pumped up. So our concern is Mr. Scott is fully aware, okay, of essentially the cause of his behavior and his actions. At some point in time, you have to be accountable. The biggest issue in this entire situation, as far as who is responsible, is that back in 2019, in the same premises, in the same event, with the same artist, a very similar situation occurred.
In a tweet, Travis Scott said he is absolutely devastated by what took place last night. He said, "My prayers go out to the families and all those impacted by what happened at Astroworld Festival." Authorities in Texas were investigating Saturday a tragedy in which the crowd at a huge Travis Scott rap concert surged forward to the stage in a crush that killed 8 people and wounded at least 17 more. Around 50,000 people were in the audience at Houston's NRG Park Friday night when the crowd started pushing toward the stage as Scott was performing, triggering chaotic scenes. Other footage on social media showed scores of people rushing the gates at NRG Park, with security unable to contain the flow. Several people could be seen falling over, bringing down the metal detectors at the arena entrance, but it wasn't clear if that incident was linked to the deaths. Scott launched the Astroworld Music Festival in 2018.
In other news, 21 people survived being buried under heavy debris when a 2-story building collapsed in eastern Turkey, according to the government, with no fatalities reported as search operations ended early today. The incident occurred Tuesday afternoon on a busy street in the city of Malatya as residents filled shops on their way home from work. Earlier, Interior Ministry spokesman Ismail Katakli said rescue workers had pulled 13 people from the rubble, while 8 others managed to escape on their own. 5 of those rescued were still hospitalized, but their injuries weren't life-threatening, according to Regional Governor Aydin Barris. He had earlier said 2 were taken to intensive care. Witnesses and media reports said the building crumbled during planned renovation work that resulted in damage to one of the walls separating 2 of the ground floor restaurants.
Myanmar's junta has charged a U.S. journalist detained since May with sedition and terrorism, which carry a maximum sentence of life imprisonment, his lawyer said Wednesday. Danny Fenster, who had been working for local outlet Frontier Myanmar for around a year, was arrested as he was heading home to see his family in May and has been held in Yangon's insane prison since. The 37-year-old is already on trial for allegedly encouraging dissent against the military, unlawful association, and breaching immigration law. The additional charges under Myanmar's anti-terror and sedition laws open Fenster up to a maximum sentence of life imprisonment. The trial is scheduled to begin on November 16. They come days after former U.S. diplomat and hostage negotiator Bill Richardson met junta chief Min Aung Hlaing in the capital, Naypyidaw, handing the increasingly isolated junta some rare publicity. Richardson has previously negotiated the release of prisoners and U.S. servicemen in North Korea, Cuba, Iraq, and Sudan, and has recently sought to free U.S.-affiliated inmates in Venezuela.
Staying in Myanmar, a junta court will give its verdict next month on whether ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi broke coronavirus rules during elections her party won last year, according to a source. Myanmar has been in turmoil since the military's February coup, which sparked huge protests and a bloody crackdown on dissent. Suu Kyi, 76 years old, went on trial in June and faces a raft of charges, including illegally importing walkie-talkies, corruption, and sedition. Media have been barred from attending proceedings at the special court in the military-built capital, Naypyidaw, and the junta recently banned Suu Kyi's legal team from speaking to reporters. On Tuesday, she appeared at the latest hearing in the trial for allegedly flouting coronavirus rules during the 2020 elections, a source with the knowledge of the matter said. She would testify in her defense next week, according to the source, adding a final order pronouncing the verdict of the court was set for December 14. Suu Kyi faces 3 years in jail if found guilty. The junta court will also hear closing arguments in a separate trial for incitement next week as it begins to wrap up proceedings that could see the Nobel laureate jailed for decades. The military has alleged that the 2020 elections, which Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy won by a landslide, trouncing a military-backed party, were beset with fraud.
November 11 is Veterans Day in the U.S., and in honor of the men and women who have served or are serving their country, ABC Hawaii Pacific takes us on a brief tour of Pearl Harbor, particularly to the very spot that saw the most devastation, forcing the United States to enter World War II. Take a look. Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Hi, I'm Alex Calleja, isang podcaster, YouTuber, writer, director, at isang stand-up comedian for more than 12 years. Kaya naman, heto na ang Funniest Nakawall Videos! Ang natatanging show na bubusugin ang buong sambayanan sa katatawanan! Ito ang bagong tambayan ng buong pamilya at barkada. Mula Lunes hanggang Biyernes nyo kami makakasama tuwing 4:30 p.m. Dito lang sa Net 25. Dito, mapapanood natin ang best comedy videos na hinanap pa namin sa kasuluk-sulukan ng internet. So ano pang hinihintay nyo? Join na sa pinakabago at pinakamasayang afternoon habit ng tawanan at kulitan, ang Funniest Nakawall Videos!
Pero ang muna ngayon, di ba aayon? Puso ko'y handa, pagkalang madapa, darating ang tatlong panahon.
Hello po, ako po si Jassy Busran at may tutuparin po akong isang letter sender request ngayong linggo sa Letters in Music 1 to 2 p.m. Dito lang sa Net 25. See you!
Magkawag ng kamay, may palaging kasabay, may special someone sa aking buhay.
Welcome back. Crisis-hit property developer Evergrande has managed to raise around $144 million by slashing its stake in an internet company days before a looming debt interest payment deadline. Evergrande sold a 5.7% stake, totaling 1.12 billion Hong Kong dollars or 144 million US dollars in Hang Ten Networks Group in 3 separate transactions from last Thursday, according to Hong Kong Stock Exchange filings. The indebted property developer faces a Wednesday deadline for an overdue $148 million offshore bond coupon payment it initially missed last month. The crisis at one of China's biggest property developers has hammered investor sentiment, battled the key real estate market, and fueled fears of a spillover into the wider economy. Bogged down in a sea of debt worth more than $300 billion, Evergrande has been trying to dispose of its assets to raise cash. But some offshore bondholders said they had not received payments of over $80 million that were due Saturday, according to Bloomberg. The Hang Ten sale reduced Evergrande's stake in the internet services firm from 26.55% to 20.82%, according to the filings. Now that leaves Tencent as the biggest remaining shareholder with an almost 24% stake. Evergrande was plunged into crisis after Beijing began clamping down on the country's colossal property sector last year, a move that has prompted rare public anger and protests from anxious home buyers, suppliers, and investors.
New Zealand Trade Minister Damien O'Connor says trade and foreign ministers from the 21-nation Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, agreed at a virtual summit on the need to avoid erecting trade barriers in response to the challenges thrown up by the pandemic. Take a look.
It is free, fair and open trade that will help economies move forward out of this pandemic. With APEC comprising 47% of global trade, we need openness in our region to drive global growth. Indeed, it is trade that presents the solution to our challenges. Some 81 million jobs have been lost across the region due to COVID-19, and the impact on supply chains has been significant. But APEC members have rejected protectionism during this crisis. None of us are safe until we are all safe. It was heartening to hear that no APEC economy has introduced vaccine export restrictions since we discussed a shared response to vaccine nationalism back in June. 17 APEC economies have either lowered or completely removed tariffs on vaccines and related products, making them easier to access.
We try to ensure that APEC and the fora that we hold centre itself around practical responses to a global pandemic and to climate change. And in both those areas, all economies have participated with the type of, I think, focus that we require to get through this very difficult and challenging time, China included.
For us to judge, and we're not going to prejudge what China might have to change or do. What the members of CPTPP have committed to is to maintaining the high standards that were hard fought, hard won, and I don't think anyone has a view that there should be any movement from those standards. So it's up to the applicant economies to reach the standards that we have set and that we believe work well for us. I think we've all welcomed the applications by UK, by China and by Chinese Taipei. That's a separate process. Not all APEC members are part of CPTPP, and so that wasn't a core part of discussions. But nonetheless, as a trade and economic forum, all the economies would welcome the greater movement and the reduction of any barriers. CPTPP.
Ministers from the 21-nation APEC group met online to discuss their COVID-19 response ahead of a meeting of national leaders on Saturday, including U.S. President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping. Now, New Zealand Trade Minister Damien O'Connor, hosting the meeting, said highlights included a plan to voluntarily freeze fossil fuel subsidies and commitments to liberalize tariffs on vaccines and other pandemic medical supplies. O'Connor said there was overarching agreement on the need to avoid erecting trade barriers in response to the challenges by the pandemic.
As soon as younger children are allowed to get vaccinated, the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA, believes there's no more reason to delay the resumption of face-to-face classes in the country. In a briefing on Tuesday, Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Carl Kendrick Chua said it's possible for the government to allow face-to-face classes to resume by January next year.
In the coming weeks, the vaccination program will include children aged 12 to 17. When the approvals are made, we will soon include children aged 5 to 11. This opens the door to the resumption of face-to-face schooling beginning in January 2022.
Now, as of November 7, a total of 64.2 million vaccine doses have been administered across all priority groups and the general population, he noted. And of this, 34.7 million were administered as first doses, while 29.5 million were administered as the complete dose. Given this and the steady supply of vaccines arriving in the country, he said it's possible to greet 2022 with a lower Alert Level 1 status.
India's only woman-led unicorn, Nika, made its market debut Wednesday, tripling founder Falguni Nayar's net worth and making her the country's newest self-made billionaire in an ongoing IPO boom. Nayar, 58 years old, joined only 6 other Indian women dollar billionaires as her beauty and fashion retailer Nika's parent company FSN floated on on the Mumbai Stock Exchange, hitting a valuation of 1 trillion rupees, or about $13.5 billion in the first 5 minutes of trade. Investment banker Nayar turned entrepreneur at 50 with the launch of the e-commerce platform in 2012, selling beauty and personal care products via its mobile app and website.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Isa ang Southeast Asia sa nangunguna sa industriya ng supply chain management. Ngunit dahil sa COVID-19 crisis na apektuhan ito, government restrictions have led companies to suspend operations and shut down factories. This is all happening while the manufacturing sector is already struggling with rising raw material costs. Paano nga ba makakabangon ang mga kumpanya? In this episode, we'll find out with our guest, Mr. George Santiago, General Manager of RS Components, as we discuss supply chain resiliency.
Companies should start with adopting digital transformation. But the good thing is, maganda yung competition, so maraming services and solutions that were made available.
All these in this episode of Open for Business.
Hi, this is Nadia Montenegro. Always remember to cook with your heart.
Masarap talaga siya.
Yay! From Kusina ni Nadia.
Simula ngayong November 20, may malalapitan ka na. Sisimulan ng Responde ng bagong aksiman ng bayan. Alex Santos sa Responde, Mata ng Mamamayan, ngayong Sabado na. Simulcast sa Net25, Facebook at YouTube.
Anak! Tulong! Anak! Anak! Tulong sa atin! Ay, bakit?
Ma'am, yung pumasok ng pandemya talaga sobrang dagok. Talaga grabe yung ginawa sa amin. Tapos, sasabihan pa ng sakit ng asawa ko. Ultimo gamot, ma'am. Magkano lang ang gamot? 2, 3. Hindi ko pa mabili. Siguro, pagsubok lang naman to. Hindi naman siguro ibibigay sa akin to kung hindi ko kaya.
Hindi nagsasalita. Naninikip yung dibdib niya. Tapos, pumunta ka na ngayon dito, kuya.
Ano naman? Puro kabiro.
Presence of uniformed personnel to enforce quarantine procedures.
Para kang superhero, Papa.
Isipin may makakain ka lang. Diba? Kaya sabi nila na lalabas ka. Hindi ka ba niyawa? Sana mo paglabas mo. Hindi mo alam po nakakuha ka na ng sakit. Diba ganun? Ako inisip po. Kasi naman, hindi ako lumabas. Gutom naman kami.
Para sa isang tatay, napakasarap maramdaman na buong-buo ang tiwala ng iyong pamilya. Nasama-sama niyong malalagpasan at mapagtatagumpayan ang anumang hamon ng buhay. Kahit na mabigat na pagsubok ang pinagdadaanan natin, bagong pag-asa at bagong inspirasyon ang ihahatid namin sa inyo.
Pinapangarap niya na mapagamot siya, mama. Ito na yung katuparan na para mapagamot siya. Ito na yung katuparan na para mapagamot yung misis ko, Sir Eduardo B. Manalo. Maraming salamat po sa naitulong nyo na ibinigay po sa aking pamilya.
Kaya kung kayo ay may kakilala, kaibigan o kamag-anak na nais nyong lingapin ang aming programa, ipadala nyo sa amin ang kanyang kwento. Ako po si Apple David at ito ang Lingap Stories.
Welcome back. The European Union's second highest court today shut down an appeal by Google against a 2.4 billion euro or $2.8 billion fine imposed by Brussels for abusing its search engine dominance. The case centers on Google's shopping service and is one of three against the search engine giant currently moving through the EU's drawn-out appeal system. At the time, the fine was the EU's biggest ever, but it was later exceeded by a 4.3 billion euro fine against Google over Android, the company's smartphone operating system. In its appeal, Google and its parent company Alphabet had argued the EU was strong on the law, the facts, and the economics in the search engine case. But the court said it dismissed, for the most part, the action brought by the two companies and upholds the fine imposed by the Commission. It also said that by favoring its own Google shopping service over rivals in its search result rankings and positioning, Google departed from competition on the merits. It rejected Google's argument that big online retailers had their own internet sites, saying that those platforms are not on the same market in which users go comparison shopping.
New Zealand film director Peter Jackson on Wednesday announced the sale of his Oscar-winning Weta digital special effects business to a U.S. software firm intent on using it to develop the virtual reality metaverse. San Francisco-based Unity Software said the $1.6 billion acquisition would shape the future of the metaverse, an immersive 3D version of the internet tipped to transform workplaces and online interactions. The firm said Weta's technology, used in blockbusters such as the Lord of the Rings trilogy and Avatar, would allow its subscribers to create their own ultra-realistic corner of a virtual world. The metaverse is expected to develop into an online platform that makes virtual experiences, such as chatting with a friend or attending a concert, feel face-to-face. It grabbed headlines last month when Facebook changed its parent company name to Meta to reflect founder Mark Zuckerberg's commitment to the concept.
In other tech news, Facebook and iconic eyewear brand Ray-Ban launched their new smart glasses, the latest effort in a tricky niche market, but which the social media giant sees as a step towards its future.
Sits at the intersection of fashion and innovation.
The Ray-Ban Stories shades can take pictures and video upon the wearer's voice commands. And the frames can connect wirelessly to Facebook's platform through an app. Notably, the Ray-Ban Stories glasses will not have augmented reality features, technology that can mesh online computing with visual cues such as mapping or face recognition. Cameras are built into the front of the frames, while the arms are designed to act as directional speakers for listening to calls or streamed audio. A white light in the front of the frame goes on when the cameras are being used, which is intended as a privacy feature to alert people they could be filmed. Users can take a picture or a video clip of up to 30 seconds by pressing a button at the temple or using a voice command, both of which can be cues that a camera is on. The glasses also have a physical switch for turning them off. Users log into the glasses Facebook View app using their accounts at the social network. Ray-Ban Stories frames sync wirelessly to a smartphone app designed specifically for handling images or video captured by the glasses. Users can decide using the app whether they want to share pictures or video they have just captured, such as posting to Facebook or attaching them to an email.
And innovation, which is why today is so special.
A giant love-hate sculpture or sculpted ambigram is unveiled in downtown Washington, D.C. Made with 1.5 tons of metal, it can be read as either love or hate, depending on the side the viewer sees it. Take a look.
So love-hate is an ambigram. From one side it says love, from the other it says hate. And it has been touring through Europe for a great extent during the last few years. And it's a very special day today. It's the fall of the Berlin Wall. So it came to America, to the heart of political America, to Washington, D.C. And it stands for a change of perspective, borders overcoming. So having the message, a giant message like this here in Washington, D.C., this is a call to action.
After traveling through Europe since May 2019, the artwork and its message of peace and social unity crossed the Atlantic for the first time under the helm of the delegation of the European Union to the United States, the German Embassy, and the Golden Triangle Business Improvement District.
In other news, licking its lips imperiously, a ginger cat mops up every last morsel of food from its curly whiskers, clearly undaunted by its supper's rather unusual base ingredient, silkworm pupae. The 15 feline residents of the Mau Tai Thai Cat Cafe in Taiwan are among volunteer taste testers, sampling a new cat food developed by silkworm experts. Take a look.
这款罐头之后，就是吃的比较有活力，对。然后上厕所的部分呢，就是比较不臭，对。然后比我预期来的好。
There you go.
I don't know what to say to that.
Face of the cat.
Oh. Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. The news continues tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live
in interesting times.
This program is supported by SMC Global Power,